Hello and welcome to our 500th episode. This is a bonus edition of our midweek conversation of First Baptist Church Sweetwater. My name is Jerry Hendricks. I'm here with T. Hamilton, and both of us have been here from the start.
500 episodes and we still have voices.
This is true. It's amazing. Well, we haven't done them consecutively.
Well, not like daily consecutively, but we have done them a lot.
Well, we were talking about this and realized that we were coming up on our 500th episode, and like all good planners, decided we'd work in an additional episode and just kind of talk about how this whole thing started.
Yeah, remember the days when we didn't actually use the live stream part of it? Like
yes,
we just recorded the audio?
I'm ready to talk about that too. I kind of looked up some things. We were talking about, before we started today, we were talking about how we got this started, how it all started.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember so our first episode was February 12th, 2018.
Okay.
And it was a series we were doing called Finish.
Right.
And so it was the start of the year. And I think from my looking at our records on that, or the archives, it wasn't the first sermon in that series, but it was just when we happened to start doing the podcast. So I remember us talking about doing the podcast, but the whole podcast thing was interesting to me because I had a phone, and I noticed that there was a podcast icon on my phone, but I didn't know what it was for.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how strange all this is.
Yeah, that we finally got it.
And then one of the person who was influential in getting me started on podcasts and listening to podcasts and all was, interestingly enough, Taylor Hamilton.
Oh, yeah. Taylor did a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now he does YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, does he?
Yeah, he loves it. Well, I mean, he watches it.
Yeah. And so that was how I discovered what that podcast button was for. I got some recommendations. I really don't know what I first started listening to, but somehow I started building sort of a library of shows. I didn't listen to. It's kind of like books for me. I wasn't listening for. I wasn't listening to sermons and things like that. I was listening to leadership and business and how-to kind of things. And so, that's kind of how that got the conversation going once I started listening, because I was listening to some people who had been podcasting for a real long time. They had classes and things like that you could take with them to show you how to do it. And one of the things that I realized was, for a smart person, it wasn't very hard to do. So that's where you come in.
We were in trouble. No, but I didn't listen to podcasts either. I had subscribed to one.
Oh, really?
But it was just to help a friend out. It was the Fantasy News Hour, TJ Wilson. It was his fantasy football show, which is ironic for me because I don't like football. And,
Or TJ.
I love TJ,
does.
especially since he listens to
Everyone does.
I need to say it in slow motion. I love TJ because he listens to us in double time.
Yeah.
So now it sounded normal. But he did a podcast of their radio show. And so he was the one that I ended up calling and saying, hey, you got to help us with this. I don't know how to do this. And he said, have you ever heard of GarageBand? I was like, well, I've heard of garage bands. And he walked us through setting up the whole thing.
Okay. I didn't know that part of the story on how we got it all set up. I knew that we kind of decided and mapped out how we wanted the intro to be on it. And even for that long ago, there weren't many churches doing what we were doing.
No, that's why we couldn't listen to sermons, because as usual the church was behind.
So but ours actually came off sounding rather professional until you got to the content.
Right. Yeah. We had a really good intro.
So one of the things that I learned in the process was that that podcasts that tended to last had more than one episode a week. And so what we did was we started doing a midweek conversation, which is what we're doing here in a bonus way. So we would have 2 drops a week. We'd drop the message, which we were already recording. We had been doing our messages and our worship service on YouTube for a year or so longer than that. I believe it was in 2017, maybe when we started those. And but then as when you start to sync, so like what we do now is that we do we tape or we provide on YouTube Live our service on Sunday.
Right.
We edit it where it's the sermon only, and then on Wednesday we drop this midweek conversation.
Right.
And so now when we drop that, they also go on our Facebook page so that they can see the video of that,
Right.
or they can just listen from a podcast app. And so it wasn't always that way in the beginning. In fact, it was a year before we started uploading we're ripping the audio from a video.
Right.
Yeah. So we just recorded. I don't even know how we did that.
We didn't. We let Kelsey do it because she was really good at it.
Okay, yeah.
Do you remember, maybe I should phrase it this way. Do you have a favorite episode that sticks out in your mind?
I was going to ask that question.
Oh, sorry. I'll wait on you to ask it then.
Well, mostly because I'm not sure that I had an answer.
I do,
that.
so I'll wait till you ask me.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
The one where we did it at camp. We were at children's camp. We were there early because we set up for children's camp and the churches hadn't arrived yet. And we recorded on the backside of Galilee. That's the dorm that we stay in for the staff. And we're outside. It was a beautiful summer morning. And it was just fun because you'd heard the boats going by in the background.
Oh, right.
Because we had such a great microphone. It was picking up boats going across the lake. And we're trying to describe what we're seeing while doing a podcast. And I don't remember anything about that podcast except that it was like my favorite one we've done.
Yeah, I do remember that. And it seems like we may have done that 2 years in a row in that location. My least favorites are the ones where we do where we're not together and we do them on a Zoom
or
recording.
something.
Yeah. Even though I think on some of those you had some good backgrounds.
That's because
But you're the technical person.
That's because youth had taught me to have fun with it.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't like that logger that one time that ended up with the cat face because this kid had set the deal. I knew how to change it at least.
Well,
so
I know
good.
one of the ones we were trying to do this. I was in Galveston, and I might have been. I don't think it was the annual meeting. I don't remember what else I might have been doing there. But I was in Galveston, and I was in this hotel, and I could not find a good location. And so I'm walking all over.
Yeah.
And I think I'm actually talking to you on Zoom.
And you've got to figure out where a good
Trying
Wi-Fi
to figure
is
out where I
also.
could get good Wi-Fi and not picking up people's voices and decent lighting.
And not getting people walking behind you.
Yeah, so I remember it was after breakfast. But anyways, it has presented its challenges through the years because when we go to camp, we don't have good Wi-Fi.
No.
And so I really don't know how we drop all that into Google Drive now.
Right.
So that's we need a pretty good internet for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kelsey picks it up, and Kelsey, who lives in the Metroplex, she does all of our stuff for us on these recordings. So, so I knew, one of the things we talked about was, and then what you would talk about with this kind of thing is the formatting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately what we discovered is it was going to have to be pretty simple because what we're doing on a week-to-week basis is pretty busy.
Right.
So we fed off of the idea of conversation, which we use that word a lot in the way that we structure our worship services. But it was interesting that the most listened to episode was episode number 14.
Wow. What was that?
It was Holy Week.
Oh, okay.
And I'm guessing, I didn't go back and listen to it, but because I was looking on two different formats to find the archives, but I'm guessing that's the one that we did with Jared Howes and Ryan Strebeck.
I do remember that one because that was before we videoed.
Right.
And so I remember I was the one who kind of did the asking questions, and I would ask a question and the three of you would look at each other at first and try and figure out who was going to talk. And I'm going, well, that's some dead air right there. And that's when we learned you got to have a plan going in.
Yeah.
I bet if we went back and listened to some of those early episodes, it'd be like if you had to listen to your earliest sermons. You're just kind of going, oh no, what did we do? But I think we've kind of hit a stride since those early episodes, to the point that I didn't tell you this ahead of time, but I talked to a friend who works for TxDOT, and on Wednesday afternoons from Abilene to Sweetwater, it's the safest stretch they have on I-20 because that's when our episode drops. I think everybody's listening to it, and they're just enjoying the soothing nature of our voice, and it's nice, calm for them for 15 minutes. There we go.
Well,
and that's a lie.
Yeah, that's going to say, that's a good story there.
Yeah,
too,
you know, that's what I do.
But that one was the most often listened to, and there were two others from different sermon series that we did back pretty deep into our archives. So yeah, we started in the spring or in February of 2018, and then as you'd guess, I mean, once COVID came along, it served as well, in being able to have yet one more way that we can communicate what's going on and everything. When we started talking about back to the format, that was a key part to that. I do remember that it wasn't it was audio recording only because we were still using a really good Bluetooth mic, but it was just one microphone in the center, and it picked up everything. It was really
we had to turn the air conditioner off because it would be so Heather asked us, was someone vacuuming in the background? We were like, no, that was our air conditioner. So that's when we learned.
We do have a little bit different setup now with being in here and a little bit more reliable microphones with lapel and so forth. And so, I mean, I don't know that we've come a long way, but we've definitely added to it.
If you sit down and think about all the number of people who have influenced us, there's a large number. As far as that goes. I mean, we're just naming off names after names, and even microphones. Sarah Godino, she pointed us to the right mics.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about favorite ones. I think here's what's interesting is that, and this isn't why it gravitated towards just me and you, but because you and I see each other every day, we're already talking about these things.
Right.
And so it's a pretty easy conversation to condense and put into a 12-minute podcast or whatever. So a lot of times it was challenging to have someone else come in. So when you're gone at spring break or something else goes on, we never know exactly how that's going to go because it's just, this seems real natural. And I think we do hear that from our audience that there is a good chemistry here. But the one that I did with Dr. Lyle after the Summit series, or at the start of the Summit series.
On the stage.
I was really, that was professional. And we transported it downstairs.
Right.
But he was so easy, and that's what you worry about. You're talking about the dead air when you're doing these kinds of things and you're having guests in, it's hard to keep that conversation going. So I had 2 or 3 things that I was going to ask about, and we needed to keep it short because everyone had eaten dinner.
Right.
And so, but man, he just took off.
He did, yeah. But that's Dr. Lyle.
Yeah, that's true. But, and then I know the last time when Strebeck filled in, I guess for you this last year during spring break, he had done it enough with us.
Right.
That one flowed real well too.
My chair's still not the same from him filling in for me.
It's not at the same place, right?
Right.
It's like a quarter of an inch off to the left or something.
He'll never know though.
Yeah. Oh no, you'll never tell him, I'm sure. But so we've had, I think what the interesting thing is that people are curious about how many people listen to this podcast.
Right. You and I are curious about that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, because a lot of it I think the more accurate numbers you get are those that you're going to see on YouTube. But when it comes to podcast numbers, then it's, who knows where that's coming from and how it's measured. But I was just listening to a couple of guys last week who were there was an interview, and they were talking about over 1 million downloads a month.
Cool.
So that's not 1 million people listening. But so since we started this in 2018, we've had 45,961 downloads.
Wow.
And so when I went and looked, and I used to watch and track the statistics of it back in the day, but I don't watch that so much anymore. Or really make that a part of my routine. But when I went on the screen a while ago to check it, so that number is right up to when we walked in here. But we had 141 downloads this week in the last 7 days.
Wow.
And so it is surprising.
That's almost 1,000 a month.
Right.
That's crazy numbers.
Yeah. And then there's spikes, like January was a spike for us. Maybe that was because of the Summit Series. I don't know.
Oh, okay. It is always interesting when we hear different people who say, on the podcast, I heard you say, or they'll respond on Facebook or something. And we, over 5 years, you think you know everybody who listens now. And then all of a sudden someone chimes in, you're like, oh, I didn't know they were listening.
Well, and there's some that I found out just recently that in our community that listen to this podcast because it was recommended from someone else in our church.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's fun how it works. It's a really good medium for us. I think for every church ought to be able to. If we can pull this off, then I think most could pull it off.
I don't know. They don't have a TJ like we do.
This is true. But yeah, so it was. Did I say that it was a year before we started doing the
video part?
The video part. Yeah, it was about a year after that, after we got started, where we started doing that. And I think it happened because we found that it was easier to have. We made it more complicated. We were trying to do YouTube Live or something like that, where it would be a live recording.
Right.
And we never could get that configured well enough away from all of the equipment that we use on a Sunday.
Right. And
all that was relatively new then. So somewhere along there, we figured out that it's easier to do. We needed the audio recording, and it was easier for Kelsey or whoever might have been before her. I guess Kelsey started. I don't know if Jacinda helps get this going or not.
Oh yeah, she did.
Yeah, but they would rip the audio from the video that we do. So we were actually videoing, and then we'll drop this in the drive. Kelsey will pick it up, and she'll send one to the podcast of just the audio.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. So
I think I think people would be interested to know how often we start over and start recording again on a podcast.
Well, that is an interesting question, and I do think people will be interested. And today was the exception.
Yeah.
We actually got started, and I go, no, I didn't. I got confused and thrown off, and so I stopped it and started again.
Yeah, but that's once. It's not
rare.
The norm.
Yeah, we don't edit.
You get what you get.
Yeah. Now, we've had at least one occasion where it didn't record.
That wasn't our fault, though. That was somebody texting in the middle of it or something, and it messed us up.
Yeah. So
No, battery went down. That's what it was. We're using my iPad, and the battery went down, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, we got to start all over. But you don't find that out until you finish, and you're like, oh man.
And I think, there's still an emotion attached to it when we finish, as far as how we think, how well we thought it went or whatever.
Right. Usually you say, oh, that was awful, or, oh, that was pretty good. And I'm like, I thought it was great.
Well, I like it when it flows. So one of the things that I've enjoyed, I don't know if I've been consistent with this lately, is, no, I probably haven't, but surprising you with the intro.
You have done that a couple times. Because used to, you would prepare me for things. Hey, just so you know, be thinking about this because I'm going to ask you this question. And now it's kind of like, oh, here's the question. I'm like,
Well, it's only now I've learned you well enough. I only prepare you ahead of time if I know that you'll want to process.
Right. Yeah. If it comes to most things, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just going to talk.
I think the other challenge to it in terms of only doing one take is I mean, we're doing this 52 weeks out of the year, and there's allergy season. There's times where we don't have, our voices are not the best,
or we have our radio voices. Yeah, those are great times.
So we still power through that, and don't get a lot of
hot tea.
Yeah, but anyways, well, so here it is. Here's number 500. Where do we go from here?
1,000. I mean, I don't know what that next milestone is.
501.
I guess 501.
Well, 501 will be
miles.
Yeah, will be the Sunday message, and that's one of the reasons that we dropped a bonus episode, just so that not just for Teak and I to reminisce about how all this started, but really to give everybody a chance that's jumped on board with us. Just that an opportunity to think through this, because it is. I will say this: it is something that I'm proud of that we do, simply because a lot of places don't do this.
Right.
And it's been a long time since I've studied a lot of the podcasting information and jumped into the beginning part of so you want to start a podcast and stuff, but most people don't make it this far.
Yeah.
In fact, most of them don't make it past a few months. And that's with even fewer episodes.
Right.
So, anyways, it's been fun, and we found something that is helpful, hopefully, to our church first and foremost, but then also something that others enjoy. And there's occasion when our friends, our family, picks up on something, and they'll want to listen in to what's going on. So,
I think the big part of it is a part of discipleship for us here at First Baptist. Like, that's the reason we started. That's what we wanted to do, and we really do emphasize that conversation idea, that these are conversations that should extend past the worship service, and it should be in your at your job and things like that. And so that, though we joke and crack up a little bit, we're like, this is intentional. There's a reason we do it. It's not just because we like taking time to sit and talk, though we do, just not this.
Well, that's a good point. When in trying to define my preaching style, as much for myself as anything, when I first came here, I just said that I tend to lead a conversation, and the intent was not so much to describe how I communicate, but rather that any sermon ought to be something that we continue to work into our life throughout the week.
Right.
So that, and I had heard this from someone, that you don't want to put a period on the end of a sermon, but it's more like a comma, that you want to continue the conversation. And so that was strategic on our part, because it is really us modeling. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a way for us to model what that conversation looks like. I think that the hardest part of that is we can always make comments. So because it's the midweek conversation, we're trying to capture a few thoughts and feelings from Sunday, but we're also trying to cast into maybe the next week.
Right.
And because we do this, we record now on a Monday, it's not real clear. We know the text and all, usually weeks in advance.
Right.
But there's not a lot for us to elaborate on. Well, a lot for me to elaborate on.
I mean, we can, but...
And then I do like the part where we can see how things are merging between the ministries of our church. So if it comes along to a time where we're in the middle of P3 or something, we can see how that fits with the overall conversation we're having. I enjoy those seasons when we're in lectionary, where the students that you're working with on Wednesdays are following a similar theme to what we are on Sundays.
Right.
And then I think, didn't you say that in our children's ministry, their Sunday school lessons?
Yeah, their curriculum is following lectionary now.
So I knew that they had been at certain times, but it didn't seem like it was doing it consistently. But from what y'all are saying now, it's something, and I like that. I like that there's reinforcement for children, to have something in a different setting that they're experiencing, and then something they can connect it to once they come to worship.
Yeah, it was, and I just stumbled upon it. I was talking to Lisa about their lesson, and I was like, well, that's the same thing Jerry's teaching on. She said, yeah, that does it a lot. I was like, really? So I started looking. It was lectionary passages.
That's great. Well, we do plan to keep on doing this. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy getting to visit with Teak about this and other things. We enjoy dropping names.
Yes.
We don't have a wide net there, but
we drop them.
But
N.T. Wright, Bob Goff. If somebody wants to celebrate with us 500 episodes, my favorite cupcakes are chocolate with chocolate icing and snickerdoodle cookies. I prefer that over cards.
So we did one celebration, but I don't even remember how many it was. Was it 100?
I think so, because we talked about cookies.
Okay.
And we had cookies.
I do remember having cookies. We didn't have 100, did we?
We had a lot. They were the thumbprints from McKay's.
Okay. Well,
they were good.
We'll keep doing this, and hopefully you'll keep joining us.
Yeah.
We look forward to what lies ahead during this. We're in an interim season, and we're trying to discover what that looks like for our church. And so it'll be fun in the future and see how this midweek conversation and our podcast all develops in the months and years ahead. So anyway, thanks for being a part of this, and share it with your friends, and we'll invite more to our conversation. So anyways, thanks for joining me this afternoon, Teak. It's been fun.
Yes, it has.
And we'll go celebrate some other things.
Happy
now.
500.
Happy 500 to you. See ya.
See ya.